You know what nobody tells you about parallel universes? They're not someplace else. Right now, as you're watching this, there's a version of the story where you already clicked away. Another where you never found this video at all. And here's what keeps me up at night. We spend our whole lives terrified we made the wrong choice, married the wrong person, took the wrong job, said the wrong thing, but what if I told you that the very fact you're worried about it means you fundamentally misunderstand what a choice even is? Every decision you agonize over, it's like being angry at a river for flowing downhill. And once you see why, you'll never lose sleep over a decision again. I'm serious. I want you to think about the last time you lay awake at 3 in the morning, replaying some moment from your past. Maybe it was something you said that came out wrong. Maybe it was a relationship you ended or didn't end. Maybe it was a career path you took or didn't take. And in your head, you're running this simulation over and over. What if I'd said this instead? What if I'd been braver? What if I'd known then what I know now? You're torturing yourself with these phantom versions of your life, these ghost timelines where everything worked out better, where you were smarter, kinder, more capable. And here's the thing that breaks my heart. You think you're alone in this. You think everyone else made the right choices and you're the only one stuck in the wrong universe. But I'm going to tell you something that comes straight from the deepest mathematics we have about reality. Something that will either terrify you or set you free, and I'm betting on the second one. The parallel universes people talk about, the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, it's real. I mean really real as anything in physics can be. But what it actually means, what it does to our understanding of choice and regret and responsibility, nobody talks about that part because it's too uncomfortable. It undermines everything we've been taught about how to live. See, we've been operating under this assumption that there's a correct version of your life somewhere, and you're either living it or you screwed up and you're living the wrong one. We treat our lives like there's an answer key in the back of the book, and we just can't see it yet. But quantum mechanics says something completely different. It says that all possible versions of events actually happen. Not metaphorically, actually happen. Every quantum interaction branches reality into every possible outcome. But, and this is crucial, this is the part everyone misses, those branches immediately become causally isolated from each other. They can't talk to each other. They can't see each other. For all practical purposes, once the split happens, the other branches might as well not exist. They're not places you could visit. They're not lives you're missing out on. They're mathematical descriptions of possibility space that has no bearing whatsoever on your lived experience. So why does this matter? Why am I telling you about physics when you came here thinking about the life you wish you'd lived? Because understanding what parallel universes actually are destroys the foundation of regret. Completely. Not by making you feel better with a nice story, but by showing you that the thing you're regretting is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what could have happened. You think your morning road's not taken. But those roads don't exist. They never existed. There was only ever one road, the one you're on, and the feeling that you could have taken a different one is an illusion created by the way your brain models possibility. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Richard, that sounds like fatalism. You're saying I had no choice, so why should I care about anything? Why should I try? And that's exactly the wrong conclusion, but I get why you'd go there. So let me show you something more subtle. Let me show you why determinism and responsibility aren't opposites. Why understanding that you couldn't have chosen differently is actually the thing that makes you free to choose better next time. This video is going to do something specific for you. You came here carrying this weight of alternate lives, all these versions of yourself that you think are out there living better, doing better, being better. And that weight is crushing you. It's making it impossible to be present in the only life you actually have. By the time we're done, you're going to understand why that weight was always an illusion. Not because I'm going to make you feel better about your choices, but because you're going to see clearly why the entire framework of should have been different makes no sense. And this isn't just philosophical comfort. This isn't just me telling you a nice story so you feel better. This comes directly from the mathematics of quantum mechanics, from the structure of causation itself, from the actual way reality works. And when you see it clearly, something happens in your chest. This knot you've been carrying, sometimes for decades, it just dissolves. Not because you've talked yourself into feeling better, but because you've seen through the confusion that created the knot in the first place. Most advice about regret and choice tells you to reframe things, to look on the bright side, to practice gratitude for what you have instead of mourning what you don't. And that's fine, that can help. But it leaves the basic structure intact. It leaves you still believing that there was a correct choice and you might have missed it. What I'm going to show you is that the structure itself is wrong. There was never a correct choice. There was only the choice that happened, and it happened because everything that made you you in that moment pointed in exactly that direction. This isn't about giving up. It's about understanding what agency actually is. Real agency, not the folk psychology version where there's a little person inside your head who stands outside causation and makes choices. That version of free will is incoherent, and it's making you miserable. But there's another kind of freedom, a freedom that comes from understanding that you are a pattern in the universe responding to inputs, learning, growing, changing. And that pattern can respond differently as it gets new information. That's the only freedom that exists, and it turns out it's enough. More than enough. It's everything. So here's what we're going to do. First, I'm going to tell you some stories from my own life, from physics, from the actual experience of what it's like to carry regret, and then to watch it dissolve when you understand causation clearly. Then I'm going to break down what quantum mechanics actually says about parallel universes, what the many worlds interpretation really means, and why it doesn't mean what you think it means. And then I'm going to show you how to live with this understanding. Practical steps, things you can do tonight when that 3 a.m. regret spiral starts up again. And I'm going to tell you right now, some of this is going to make you uncomfortable. Because if I'm right, if the universe really works this way, then some of the stories you've been telling yourself about yourself fall apart. The story that you're a failure because you didn't live up to your potential. The story that you're a victim because other people made choices that hurt you. The story that somewhere there's a better version of you living the life you were supposed to have. All of those stories, they're based on misunderstandings about causation, and they have to go. But here's what you get in exchange. You get presence. You get this moment right now, without the weight of all those phantom lives crushing down on you. You get to look at another person who hurt you and see them clearly. See them as a pattern responding to inputs just like you. See them as trapped in causation just like you. And suddenly hatred becomes optional. Not because you've talked yourself into forgiveness, but because you've seen through the illusion that they could have been different. You get to look at yourself in the mirror and see clearly what you were, why you did what you did, and instead of shame or pride, just information. This is what the pattern did. This is what the pattern learned. This is what the pattern is becoming. And there's a tenderness in that, a compassion that doesn't come from trying to be a good person, but from seeing reality accurately. Okay, let me start with a story. I need you to see where this comes from for me, because this isn't abstract. This isn't just physics theory I'm playing with. This is something that saved my life, or at least saved me from wasting years of my life on a particular kind of suffering that I now recognize as completely unnecessary. My father, he fixed radios. We lived in Far Rockaway, and he had this little shop, and people would bring in their broken radios and he'd fix them. And I used to watch him work. I was maybe 9, 10 years old, and I was obsessed with understanding how things worked. Not just knowing that they worked, but really getting it, you know? Feeling it in my bones. And one day I'm watching him test a vacuum tube. You probably don't even know what that is, but it was this glass tube with elements inside, and electricity would flow through it in specific ways, And that's how radios amplified signals back then. And he's testing it, and he looks at me, and he can see I'm trying to understand something. So I ask him, "Dad, how does the radio know which station to play?" Because in my head, I'm thinking the radio has to somehow reach out into the air and grab the right signal and ignore all the others, like it's making a choice. And my father, he stops what he's doing. He looks at me very seriously, and he says, "It doesn't know. It plays them all. All the radio stations are playing through your radio at the same time. The dial, all that does is let you listen to one of them. But they're all there. Always." Now, I didn't fully understand what he meant then. I just thought it was a cool fact about radios. But that moment stuck with me. It stuck with me through school, through MIT, through graduate work, through everything. And then one day, I'm in a lab, and I'm doing the double-slit experiment. You know this one? You shoot a single electron at a barrier with 2 slits in it. One electron, one single particle, and somehow, impossibly, it goes through both slits at the same time. It interferes with itself. It acts like a wave even though it's a particle. And the math that describes this, the wave function, it's showing you that the electron exists in a superposition of states. It's not that we don't know which slit it went through, it's that it went through both. Literally both. The electron itself is spread out over possibility space until we measure it. And then, only then, does it collapse into one definite outcome. But here's the thing. Hugh Everett comes along in the 1950s, and he asks, what if it doesn't collapse? What if both outcomes happen? What if when the electron goes through both slits, the universe splits into 2 branches, one where we measure it going through the left slit, one where we measure it going through the right slit, and both branches are equally real? And suddenly I'm back in my father's shop, and I'm hearing him say, "It plays them all. The radio plays all the stations. The dial just lets you listen to one. Reality plays all the outcomes. Your consciousness just lets you experience one." Do you see it? Do you see what this means? It means the universe isn't choosing between possibilities. It's doing all of them. Every quantum interaction, and there are billions happening in your body right now, every one of them splits reality into every possible outcome. And each branch continues on, completely unaware of the others, because they decohere from each other essentially immediately. So when you lie awake thinking about the choice you didn't make, the life you're not living, you're imagining that there's another you somewhere experiencing that life. But that's not what the physics says. The physics says that yes, technically, in some branch of the wave function, that outcome occurred. But that branch has zero causal connection to you. It can't influence you, you can't see it, you can't visit it, you can't learn from it. For all purposes that matter to your lived experience, it doesn't exist. The only universe that exists for you is this one, the one where you made the choice you made. And you made that choice because you are a deterministic pattern responding to inputs. Given your genes, your history, your fears, your knowledge in that exact moment, you couldn't have chosen differently. Not wouldn't have. Couldn't have. The math doesn't allow it. And I know that sounds like I'm saying you're a robot with no free will, but stay with me. Because here's what changed for me when I really understood this. I was married once before Gwyneth. I don't talk about it much, but my first wife, she left me. And she was right to leave me. I was so absorbed in physics, so completely focused on the work, that I wasn't present for her. I wasn't the partner she needed. And for years after, I tortured myself. What if I had been different? What if I had been more attentive? What if I had prioritized her more? All these what-ifs just eating me alive. And then one day I'm thinking about the wave function, about determinism, about the fact that every particle in the universe follows predictable laws, and I realize, wait, what if applies to a system that could have been in a different state? But I couldn't have been in a different state. The version of me that married her was shaped by everything that came before. My childhood, my obsessions, my emotional limitations. Given all of that, I was always going to be exactly who I was. I couldn't have been the attentive husband she needed because I wasn't that. The inputs hadn't created that pattern, and something broke open in my chest, not in a bad way, in a releasing way, because I suddenly saw that I'd been carrying this guilt that was based on a complete fiction. The fiction that there was a different me available to make different choices. But there wasn't. There was only the me that existed, doing what that me was capable of doing. Now, does this mean I'm not responsible? No, because responsibility isn't about could have done otherwise. Responsibility is about can I learn from this and become different going forward? And the answer to that is yes. I can take the information of what happened, the pain I caused, the pattern that emerged, and I can become a pattern that responds differently to similar situations in the future. And I did. With Gwyneth, I was different. Not because I reached back in time and changed past me, but because present me had new information and could respond to it. That's the only freedom that exists. Not freedom from causation, but freedom within it. The ability to be a pattern that learns. Are you with me so far? Because this is the foundation of everything else I'm going to tell you. If you can really get this, if you can feel it, not just understand it intellectually, but feel it in your body, then everything changes. Let me tell you another story. This one is about a student I had. Brilliant woman, maybe 25 years old, working on her doctorate, and she comes into my office one day and she's falling apart. Just completely stuck. Can't finish her dissertation, can't even work on it. Just paralyzed. So I ask her what's wrong, and she starts telling me about all the mistakes she made. She says, if I had started earlier, if I had chosen a different advisor, if I hadn't wasted 2 years going down the wrong research path, if I had been more disciplined, more focused, if I hadn't been so scared to ask for help. Just if, an endless spiral of self-recrimination. And I let her talk. I let her get it all out. Because sometimes people need to hear themselves before they can hear anyone else. And after about 20 minutes of this, I get up and I go to the chalkboard and I draw a simple diagram. Just a particle entering a magnetic field. And I draw the path it takes, curving in a specific direction based on its charge and velocity. And I ask her, when this electron enters the field, could it have gone a different direction? And she looks at me like I'm crazy. She says, no, of course not. It's determined by its charge, by its velocity, by the strength of the field. It's just physics. So I take the chalk and I circle the word determined on the board. And I circle it again. And again. And I keep circling it until the chalk breaks. And I turn to her and I say, so why are you any different? She just stares at me. I say, you entered a field. The field of your family, your psychology, your knowledge at age 22, your fears, your resources, and you followed a path. The path you took was completely determined by who you were when you entered. You couldn't have gone a different direction any more than that electron could have. Not wouldn't have, couldn't have. And she gets angry. She says, so nothing is my fault? I have no responsibility? I can just do whatever I want and blame it on determinism? And I say, no, you have all the responsibility right now, in this moment, for what you do next. The past isn't something you could have changed. It's information about who you were. But the future, that's a question. What are you becoming? What is the pattern learning? And I watch her face change. It's like something physical is happening to her. Her shoulders drop. Her breathing changes. And then she starts crying. Not sad crying, release crying. The kind of crying that happens when you've been carrying something heavy for so long that you forgot it was heavy, and suddenly someone shows you that you can put it down. She finished her dissertation in 4 months, went on to do beautiful work, and years later she told me that that conversation changed her life. Not because I gave her some technique or trick, but because I showed her that the weight she was carrying was based on a misunderstanding. She thought she was carrying the weight of her mistakes, but really she was carrying the weight of the fiction that she could have not made them. Do you see the difference? It's subtle, but it's everything. Your past self couldn't have been different, but your present self can be. And that transition from past to present, that's where all your actual power lives. Now let me give you a metaphor that might help this land. Imagine reality as an infinite orchestra, every instrument playing every possible note simultaneously. That's the quantum wave function. Pure, undifferentiated possibility. Just this massive superposition of every outcome that could happen. Now imagine you're given headphones, and these headphones have a filter built in, and the filter only lets through one melody, one specific sequence of notes. That filtered melody is your experience of reality. That's your classical world, the one where things seem definite and decided, and you could spend your whole life mourning all the other symphonies you're not hearing. You could torture yourself thinking about the melody that would have played if you'd made different choices. But here's the truth. Those other melodies don't exist in any meaningful sense. They're mathematical possibilities, not lived experiences. You know what exists? The specific sequence of notes that made you cry at your grandmother's funeral. The exact timbre of your child's laugh if you have children, or the specific quality of light on the day you graduated high school, or fell in love for the first time, or realized you'd been wrong about something important. That's what exists. This melody. The one you're hearing right now. And the parallel universes people fantasize about, the other lives they imagine they should be living. Those aren't homes you failed to build. They're ghosts you're choosing to haunt yourself with. And you can stop. Anytime you want. You just have to see clearly that the ghost was never real. Okay, so you might be thinking, that's beautiful, Richard. Very poetic. But what about the actual physics? What about the many worlds interpretation? What about Everett's mathematics? Does that or does that not say that parallel universes exist? Let me get technical for a minute, but I'll keep it clear. Schrödinger's equation, that's the fundamental equation that describes how quantum systems evolve over time. And it's beautiful. It's deterministic. It's reversible. It's perfect. If you know the wave function at one moment, you can calculate exactly what it'll be at any other moment, forward or backward in time. The wave function itself contains all possible states of the system superposed together. So one electron, its wave function describes all possible positions and momenta simultaneously. Not that we don't know which one it has all of them. Now, in the Copenhagen interpretation, which was the dominant view for a long time, they said that when you measure the system, the wave function collapses. All those possibilities suddenly snap into one definite outcome. And this collapse is random, unpredictable, genuinely probabilistic. But there's a problem with this. What counts as a measurement? What makes the wave function collapse? Is it consciousness? Is it interaction with a large system? The Copenhagen interpretation never really answered this clearly. So Everett comes along and says, what if nothing collapses? What if the wave function just keeps evolving according to Schrödinger's equation forever? And if that's true, then when a quantum system interacts with its environment, including you measuring it, the whole combined system goes into superposition, which means mathematically all outcomes happen. The universe branches into every possibility. Now this sounds insane, it sounds like science fiction, but mathematically it's actually the simplest interpretation. No mysterious collapse, no special role for consciousness or measurement, no magic. Just the wave function evolving deterministically forever. But here's what everyone gets wrong when they hear about this. They imagine these branches as equally real parallel Earths where other versions of you are living full lives. They imagine you could somehow jump between branches, or at least that other yous are out there having experiences. That's not what the math says. The math says that these branches decohere from each other essentially instantly. They become causally isolated. Once they split, there is no interaction, no communication, no connection whatsoever. Each branch might as well be its own universe. In fact, that's exactly what they are. So yes, in some technical sense, all outcomes happen. But the branch where you experience outcome A has absolutely no causal connection to the branch where you experience outcome B. For all purposes that matter to your lived experience, only one branch exists, the one you're in. And here's the deeper point. This shows you something profound about the nature of choice and outcome. At the quantum level, everything is deterministic. The wave function evolves according to exact laws. But at our level, the level of conscious experience, we can't predict which branch we'll end up experiencing. It feels random to us, even though it's deterministic at a deeper level. So you get both. Determinism at the fundamental level, the universe doing exactly what the laws of physics say it must do, and unpredictability at our level, the genuine experience of not knowing what will happen next. Both true simultaneously. Like how water is deterministic at the molecular level, each molecule following exact laws, but turbulent and unpredictable at the macro level. You're both determined and free. You're both a pattern following rules and an agent making choices. It's a paradox, and it's true. Now let me tell you what this means for how you think about yourself. We have this model in our heads, and it's so deep we don't even notice it's there. We think there's a little me inside, separate from the universe, watching everything through the eyes like it's a movie screen, and making choices about how to respond. The little person inside your head watching screens and pulling levers. But that's incoherent, because if there's a little person inside your head who's inside that person's head, you get infinite regress, turtles all the way down. The neuroscience backs this up. Benjamin Libet did these experiments where he showed that decisions form in your brain milliseconds before you're consciously aware of them. Your brain activity predicts your choice before you know you've chosen. Now, he thought this meant free will doesn't exist, and a lot of people got upset about that. But I think he was measuring the wrong thing, because here's what's really happening. You're not separate from the universe making choices about it. You are a pattern in the universe. You are a process, and the universe is choosing through you. Like a whirlpool in a river isn't separate from the river. It's what the river is doing in that location. So when you make a choice, you're not some separate agent reaching in from outside causation and steering things. You're the universe doing what it does when it's organized in the specific pattern that is you. Given your structure at that moment, given all the inputs, you could only have done what you did. Just like water could only have flowed downhill. But here's the question that stops people. If I couldn't have chosen differently, am I responsible for what I did? And the answer is yes, absolutely yes, but not for the reason you think. Responsibility isn't about could have done otherwise. That's the folk model, the incoherent one. Real responsibility is about, are you the kind of pattern that responds to consequences? Are you the kind of system that learns? A rock isn't responsible for rolling down a hill because the rock doesn't change based on what happens when it hits the bottom. It's just a rock. It'll roll down again exactly the same way next time, but you're different. You're a pattern that incorporates information. You learn. You grow. When you touch a hot stove and it burns you, you don't touch hot stoves anymore. That's responsibility. Not because you could have not touched it the first time given who you were, but because you can become a pattern that doesn't touch it next time. So all the responsibility is there. All of it. But the shame isn't. The shame was always based on the fiction that you could have been different then. But you can be different now. You can respond to the information of what happened and become something new. Let me make this personal again, because I think that's when it really lands. I was a schmuck to my first wife. I really was. I was absent. I was dismissive when she tried to talk to me about her needs. I made her feel small and unimportant compared to my work. And I'm not proud of that. It's painful to remember. Could past Richard have been different? Let me be very precise here. Past Richard was operating on incomplete information. Emotionally incomplete, practically incomplete, morally incomplete. He didn't understand what it took to be a good partner. He didn't see her needs clearly because he was so caught up in his own head. He was shaped by a childhood where emotions weren't talked about, by a field where being brilliant mattered more than being kind, by a psychology that hadn't yet learned how to be present. Given all of that, could he have been different? No, he was the only thing he could have been. He was a pattern outputting exactly what that configuration of matter and history would output. Can present Richard be different? Yes, because present Richard has new information. He's seen the consequences. He's felt the pain he caused. He's become a pattern that knows something past Richard didn't know, and that changes the output. That's the only freedom that exists. And it's enough. It's everything. It means I don't have to carry guilt about being who I was. I can look at who I was with clarity and compassion, and I can take responsibility for who I'm becoming. And if you really get this, if you really feel it, something profound happens to the way you see other people. Because if you couldn't have been different, then neither could they. Think about someone who hurt you, really hurt you, betrayed you, abandoned you, abused you, whatever it was. Bring them to mind right now. Feel that anger or pain or whatever comes up. Now ask yourself, given everything they were, their childhood, their wounds, their fears, their limitations, the exact configuration of their brain chemistry in that moment, could they have done differently? And I'm not asking if they should have. I'm not asking if what they did was okay. I'm asking, could they, as a deterministic pattern, have output something different than what they output? The answer is no. They were the only thing they could have been, just like you. Does this excuse them? Absolutely not. They still caused real harm. You still need to protect yourself. You still need boundaries. The harm is real, even if the person was determined to cause it. But here's what changes. You stop needing them to suffer for you to heal. You stop waiting for an apology before you can move forward. You stop carrying hatred, because hatred was always based on the story that they could have been different but chose not to be. They didn't choose. They couldn't choose. They were a pattern playing out. And when you see that clearly, something releases. Not forgiveness in the sense of saying what they did was okay, but forgiveness in the sense of seeing them as another confused pattern in the universe, as trapped in causation as you are. I had a colleague once who plagiarized some of my work, took credit for an idea that was mine, and I was furious. I mean, really angry. It felt like theft. It felt personal. And then I thought about who this person was. Deeply insecure, desperate for recognition, raised in a culture where success was everything and the means didn't matter, shaped by advisors who probably did the same thing to him. And I realized, given who he was, he couldn't have done otherwise. The pattern that was him in that moment could only output plagiarism. Did I still call him out? Yes. Did I make sure people knew the idea was mine? Yes. Did I protect my work going forward? Yes. All of that is responsibility. But the hatred dissolved, because I saw him clearly, not as evil, not as someone who could have chosen better, but as a pattern doing what that pattern does, and that's not weakness, that's not being a doormat, that's seeing reality accurately. And when you see reality accurately, you can respond to it appropriately without carrying unnecessary suffering. Let me talk about the present moment for a minute, because this is where everything comes together. If parallel universes exist, but are causally isolated from you, and if your past self couldn't have been different, then the only universe that exists for you is this one, and the only moment is now. But we don't live that way. We live in constant mental time travel. We're replaying the past, which is unchangeable, we're rehearsing the future, which is unknowable, and we're completely missing the present, which is the only thing that's real. In quantum mechanics, there's this principle that only the present state contains all information. The past is encoded in now. It doesn't exist separately somewhere. And the future is potential in now. It's not predetermined, not existing yet. All you ever have is the current configuration of the wave function. That's it. That's the only thing that's real. Applied to your life, your past exists only as memory traces in your current neural patterns. It's not back there somewhere. It's information stored in the structure of your brain right now. And your future exists only as possibility space based on your current state. It's not up ahead waiting for you. It's potential, not actual. So when you're worrying about a past choice, notice this. Where is that past? Show me the past. Point to it. You can't because it's not there. It's a thought arising now, a neural pattern firing now. The past, as an independent thing, doesn't exist. It's only ever a present moment thought about what was. And when you're anxious about the future, where is that future? Show me. Point to it. You can't. It hasn't happened. It's a thought arising now about what might be. All suffering happens now. Not about then or later, but about stories we're telling ourselves now about then or later. And when you really get this, when you feel it, not just think it, there's this incredible relief. Because you realize you don't have to fix the past. It doesn't exist to be fixed. And you don't have to control the future. It doesn't exist to be controlled. You only have to respond to this. To what's actually true right now. What's actually true right now. Not your thoughts about what happened or what might happen, but what's actually present. The feeling of breath moving in and out. The sensation of the chair against your body. The sound of my voice or the words on the screen. This. Just this. That's all that ever exists. And paradoxically, when you stop trying to escape this moment into past or future, this moment gets richer. You start noticing things you've been missing. The quality of light, the texture of experience, the specific flavor of this particular now. People call this mindfulness or presence, and that's fine, but I want you to understand it's not just a nice practice. It's the accurate perception of reality. Past and future are useful concepts for planning and learning, but they're not places. They're mental models. The only place is here. The only time is now. Now let me address something that I know is bothering some of you. You're thinking, okay, Richard, if everything is determined, why try? Why make any effort? Why feel bad when I screw up? If I couldn't have done otherwise, why does anything matter? And this is where people get confused. They think determinism means fatalism. But that's a misunderstanding. Yes, everything is determined by prior causes. But you are part of the determination. Your effort, your remorse, your growth, these are the mechanism by which the pattern changes. You're not separate from the causal chain. You're in it. You're part of how causation works. Think about a computer program. It's completely determined by its code and its inputs. Does that mean it doesn't really compute? Does that mean the computation is somehow fake or doesn't matter? Of course not. The computation is real. It happens. It produces results. The fact that it's determined doesn't make it less real. Same with you. Your choices are real. They happen. They produce results. The fact that they're determined by prior causes doesn't make them less real or less important. It just means they're part of the causal structure of reality instead of magic that happens outside it. So you should try hard because your trying is what shapes outcomes. You should feel remorse when you cause harm because that feeling is what changes future behavior. You should love because love is what creates connection. None of this is undermined by determinism. It's enabled by it. The stance is this: act as if you have free will. Because behaviorally, functionally, you do. You're making choices, learning, growing. But understand that metaphysically, it's all determined. You couldn't have chosen differently given who you were. Hold both of these truths simultaneously without collapse. That's wisdom. It's like being an actor in a play. You're saying the lines, making the gestures, feeling the emotions. From inside the role, it's all real. Your choices as the character matter. But step back, and you know it's scripted. Both perspectives are true. You're both inside and outside simultaneously. Now let me give you some practical tools. Because this is all beautiful philosophy, but you need to be able to use it when you're actually suffering. When you notice yourself spiraling about a past choice, here's what you do. First, locate the feeling in your body. Where is the regret sitting? Is it in your chest, your throat, your stomach? Don't try to change it, just observe it. This is the present moment reality of regret. It's not the past, it's a sensation happening now. Second, ask the quantum question. Given everything I was in that moment, my knowledge, my fears, my desires, my brain chemistry, could I have actually chosen differently? Not should I have, but could I have? Be brutally honest. With that exact configuration, was another choice physically possible? The answer, if you're honest, is no. It wasn't possible, that you doesn't exist anymore, that you was a specific pattern, and that pattern could only do what it did. Third, separate harm from blame. Did my action cause harm? Maybe yes. Can I take responsibility for addressing that harm now? Yes. Could past me have been different? No. Can present me be different going forward? Yes. You see the structure? You're not letting yourself off the hook. You're being brutally honest about what actually happened and what you can actually do about it. Fourth, the release. Say this out loud or in your mind. I was the only thing I could have been, and now I am becoming something new. Feel the physical sensation of letting go. Not forgetting what happened. Not pretending it was okay. Just releasing the story that you could have been different then. Try this right now. Think of one regret you carry. One choice you keep replaying. Go through these 4 steps. Actually do it. Don't just think about doing it. Do it. What do you notice? For most people, there's a shift. Sometimes subtle, sometimes profound. The obsessive replaying slows down. The emotional charge lessens. It doesn't disappear completely, but it becomes manageable. It becomes information instead of torture. Here's another practice. When you're angry at someone, use what I call the compassion microscope. Picture the person who hurt you. Now zoom out. See them as a child before they knew anything. See the forces shaping them. Parents, wounds, fears, limitations they inherited. Zoom out further. See them as a biological organism responding to stimuli. Chemistry, electricity, patterns learned before conscious memory. Zoom out again. See them as a temporary pattern in the universe. Atoms that will scatter. Energy that will transform. At what zoom level could they have been different? As a child shaped by forces beyond their control? No. As an organism operating on developed patterns? No. As a temporary arrangement of matter? No. This doesn't mean what they did was okay. It means you see them as trapped in causation like you. And from that seeing, boundaries without hatred. Protection without needing them to have been different. Try this with someone you're angry at. Actually do the visualization. See what shifts. You might be surprised. Another practice for when you're lost in parallel universe thinking. When you're dwelling on the lives you're not living. Use these anchor questions. What can I see right now? Actually look. Don't just glance. Look. What can I hear right now? Actually listen. Notice sounds you'd normally filter out. What's touching my skin right now? Feel it. The chair, your clothes, the air. What's my next breath like? Breathe it consciously. This might sound simple, almost trivial, but what you're doing is returning to the only universe that exists. This one. The parallel yous are mathematical abstractions. This you is the only one breathing. Set a timer on your phone for 3 random times each day. When it goes off, stop for 5 seconds. Run through the anchor questions. That's it. You're training your brain to default to presence instead of simulation. And neural pathways strengthen with use. One more practice. Once a week, write in a journal. 3 parts. First, this week I became aware that and complete it with something you learned about yourself. Not judgment, just observation. I noticed I get defensive when criticized. I discovered I avoid difficult conversations. Second, given who I was, then and complete it with the lens of determinism. Given my fear of abandonment and the stress I was under, I snapped at my partner. Not excuse, explanation. Third, now that I know this, I can, and complete it with what changes based on this information. Now that I know I get defensive, I can notice it earlier and pause before responding. Future-facing. Concrete. You're retraining how you relate to yourself. From judgment to curiosity, from shame to information, from paralysis to movement. These practices work, not because they're clever tricks, but because they're aligning you with reality. You're seeing clearly instead of through the distortion of could have been different. And when you see clearly, appropriate action becomes obvious. I want to bring this home now. We started with you drowning in parallel universes. All the lives you're not living, all the choices you can't stop replaying. Haunted by a better version of yourself that doesn't exist. Paralyzed by decisions that are already behind you. Now you understand. The many worlds interpretation isn't about other yous judging you from better timelines. It's about the mathematical structure of reality. All possibilities existing in superposition until your particular path crystallizes through decoherence. And your particular path isn't the wrong branch, it's the only branch where you exist. You learned that determinism doesn't remove responsibility, it removes shame. You couldn't have been different then, but you can respond differently now. That's not a loophole, that's the entire point. And you discovered that forgiveness, of yourself and others, isn't a moral achievement you work toward. It's what happens naturally when you understand causation clearly. It's physics, not virtue. You know what the most beautiful part of this is? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's not like positive thinking where you have to keep reminding yourself. It's more like, once you understand that the Earth goes around the Sun, you can't go back to thinking the Sun goes around the Earth. You've seen the structure of reality, and you can't pretend you haven't. So here's what I want you to remember. Really take this into your body. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not in the wrong timeline. You are a pattern in the universe responding to reality as clearly as you can see it. Every moment you spent hating yourself for not being different was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what different could even mean. Given who you were, you could only have been exactly who you were. And now, given who you are, you can only be exactly who you are. But who you are changes as you get new information. That's the mechanism of growth. The you who is watching this video is the only you who exists, and that specific configuration of matter and energy and memory, is exactly what the universe is doing right here, right now. You don't need permission from parallel universes to be here. You are here. Start here. There's a line I love from a Zen teacher. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Same actions, different understanding. You're still going to face choices. You're still going to make mistakes. You're still going to feel regret sometimes. But now you know what regret actually is. It's information about what the pattern learned, not evidence that you failed some cosmic test. And when you meet other people, you'll see them differently. Not as moral agents who could have chosen better, but as fellow patterns, equally trapped in causation, equally doing their best with the information available to them. And from that seeing, compassion isn't something you practice, it's what naturally arises. I think about my father a lot. He died when I was young, and sometimes I wonder what he would think of the life I've lived. Did I make him proud? Did I waste opportunities he gave me? All that normal child of a parent stuff. And then I remember, he couldn't have wondered any specific thing because he doesn't exist anymore. The pattern that was him dispersed, and I couldn't have made him proud or disappointed because I could only have been exactly what I became. Given the inputs, given the structure, this is what emerged. But here's what's beautiful. The pattern that was him lives on in the pattern that is me. His way of thinking about radios, his curiosity, his kindness, that's encoded in my structure. Not because I chose to carry it on, but because patterns propagate. And now, through this video, something of both of us propagates into you. We're not separate beings making isolated choices. We're patterns in an interconnected web, each one shaping the others, all of it determined and all of it mattering profoundly. The determinism doesn't make it matter less, it makes it matter more. Because it means every interaction, every moment of kindness or cruelty, every word spoken or withheld, it's all shaping the future in ways we can't fully predict. You are not a ghost in a machine. You are the machine becoming conscious of itself. You are the universe looking at itself through these particular eyes. And it couldn't look through different eyes because these are the only eyes here. So if this landed for you, if something shifted even slightly, let me ask you to do something. Not for me. For you and for the next person who needs this. Hit that like button. Because the algorithm will show this to someone else who's lying awake right now, haunted by the life they think they should have lived. Your click might be the domino that gets them here. And that matters. Leave a comment, even just a word. Tell me what's one regret you're ready to release. What's one way you've been haunting yourself with parallel timelines? I read every comment. Not because I have answers, but because saying it out loud breaks its power. There's something about making private suffering public, not in a performative way, but in a "this is true" way that dissolves it. You'll write it, you'll see it on the screen, and you'll realize, oh, that's just a story. That's just a pattern of thought. It's not me. I'm the awareness that notices the story. And if you want more of this, physics and philosophy and life tangled together the way it actually is, subscribe. I'm going to keep making these as long as people need them. Next week, I'm talking about entropy and why you can't go home again, even though home never left. It's about the second law of thermodynamics, and why time moves forward, and why nostalgia is beautiful, and why it hurts. Should be devastating in a good way. I'll see you there. Until then, remember this. You're not in the wrong universe. You're not living the wrong life. You're living the only life where you exist. And that's both more beautiful and more terrible than any parallel world could ever be. Be kind to the version of you that's here. It's the only version that can hear me. Take care of yourself. Pay attention. Really pay attention. To the light, to the breath, to the specific texture of this moment that will never come again. And when you catch yourself mourning a life you didn't live, come back. Come back to the breath in your lungs and the light on your face and the specific miracle of being this exact person right now, not the person you think you should have been. This person, the one that exists, that's all the universe ever asks of you. To be here, to be present, to respond to reality as clearly as you can see it, and to become, moment by moment, a pattern that sees a little more clearly than it did before. You're not broken. You never were. You've just been operating under a misunderstanding about how reality works. And now you know. And knowing changes everything. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.